1966, a Harvard psychologist named Stanley Schachter ran an experiment where he injected people with adrenaline. He told half of them it would make their heart race, and told the other half nothing at all. Same chemical, same physical sensation, but the group left in the dark started interpreting their racing heart as anger, euphoria, or fear, depending on the actors planted in the room with them. Same body, completely different emotion, because the emotion wasn't coming from the adrenaline. It was coming from the story they told themselves about the adrenaline. That single experiment quietly proved something the Stoics had already worked out 2,000 years earlier, without a lab. Epictetus wrote that people are disturbed not by things, but by their opinions about things. Schachter just gave it a mechanism. Your body produces a raw signal, a fast heartbeat, a tight chest, a knot in your stomach, but the signal is neutral. What turns it into fear, excitement, or dread is the label your mind slaps onto it a split second later. And that label is where you actually live. So here's the question worth sitting with. How much of your fear this week was the situation and how much was the label? Take something ordinary. Your boss messages you. Can we talk tomorrow? 4 words, no tone, no context, nothing sinister in the text itself. That's the fact. But your mind doesn't stop at the fact. It can't, because uncertainty is one of the most uncomfortable states for the brain to sit in. Neuroscientists have found that ambiguity can activate the amygdala more strongly than confirmed bad news does. An unresolved threat keeps the alarm running. A resolved one, even a negative one, lets the system settle, so your brain does what it's wired to do. It rushes to close the gap, and it almost always closes it with the worst-case story. Because reacting to an imagined threat costs nothing evolutionarily, while missing a real one could cost everything. That bias kept your ancestors alive. It just wasn't built for group chats and performance reviews. By the time you walk into that meeting, you've already lived through the firing, the confrontation, the disaster, none of which happened. You suffered the event twice, once in your imagination and once maybe in reality. Seneca noticed this exact pattern in his letters. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and more often from fear than from the actual thing we feared. Marcus Aurelius built an entire mental discipline around closing this gap in real time. In his private notebook, never meant for anyone else to read, he kept returning to the same drill. Describe the thing in front of you exactly as it is, stripped of the judgment layered on top. Not "this is a disaster," but "a man raised his voice." Not "I've failed," but "the outcome was different than I planned." He wasn't suppressing emotion. He was refusing to let an unverified story generate a real one. This is where it gets practical. The next time dread shows up before it's earned, ask one question. What do I actually know right now? Not what you suspect, not what your imagination filled in overnight. What's verifiable? In the boss example, what you know is 4 words asking for a conversation. Everything else is a manuscript your mind wrote in the space of 10 seconds, and then handed to your nervous system as fact. None of this means bad things never happen. Sometimes the meeting is bad news. The Stoics weren't asking you to pretend otherwise. Marcus buried children. Seneca was eventually ordered to end his own life. They knew real loss intimately. Their claim was narrower and honestly more useful. Even when the worst happens, you were never afraid of the event itself. You were afraid of the story you told about it, hours or days before it arrived. The event only has to be lived through once. The story left unchecked you live through endlessly on a loop for free. Strip it back to the fact. The fear was never in the situation. It was in the sentence you wrote about it. Delete the sentence, and most of the time the fear has nowhere left to stand. If this shifted how you think about the fear you're carrying right now, subscribe. This channel breaks down one piece of Stoic philosophy every week, backed by real psychology, not just quotes.